Mom, if you had 8 arms, what would you do with the extra ones?
Hey! I would just show them off and call myself the Spider Lady.
Good answer, Mom.
The idea of the script or the idea of the film came to me after my first son was born 5 years ago. And he had a very, very difficult birth. We were very worried about him for a few months after, and we got no sleep and it was very stressful. And during that time, I saw how close him and my wife were becoming. You know, that mother-son bond is very, very strong. And I got to thinking, is there anything a mother wouldn't do for her son? You know, how far would she go to protect her son? So during those sleepless nights at 3 o'clock in the morning is when I began jotting down the ideas for son, you know. And the way I always say writing is kind of like a therapy. It's like cathartic, you know. If you write down all of your fears, then somehow it feels better, you know. And that really did help with son, you know, the idea of worrying about a child, not knowing whether he's going to be okay, is he going to recover, and feeling helpless, that all went into the film, you know. So it started from a very, very personal place.
Good night.
I love you, Mom.
Yeah, I mean, the casting process in the US, we shot in Mississippi and we auditioned about 500 kids. And some of them came close, but I knew we hadn't found the right kid. They were very movie type kids, you know. They were very you knew that they were acting, and I wanted a kid who just seemed believable, and I wanted a kid who was instantly likable as well, because you need to keep liking him no matter what he does, you know. So we began casting in New York and LA. And we couldn't find a kid there. So we went to local casting in around Mississippi and Atlanta. And then a tape came in from Luke, who plays David. And I just knew the moment I saw it, because he was so natural on camera. It was him, you know. So then I drove down from Mississippi to Atlanta, where he's from. And I did some improv with him. He was just absolutely amazing, you know. I had worked with kids previously in quite prominent roles in The Canal, with some really strong horror stuff in that, and also in Never Grow Old. There was some real violence on screen with the kids in it, with that as well. And the trick is, I think, with kids, when you're dealing with that type of stuff, is to treat it like a game. It's always a game. They never know they're in a horror movie. So what we usually did, if there's anything particularly horrible, we shoot that without them in the room and bring them in for their reaction shots, you know. And also where we can't remove them from the room, like the stuff with the blood and stuff, we expose the child to how everything is made from the very beginning. So Luke was into the technicalities of, how do you mix the blood? How do we get the right texture for the blood? How is the prosthetic put on? So it's all very technical, and it doesn't seem like a horror movie to the kid. It's just a game, and you know, he really enjoyed it, and he couldn't wait to he didn't want to leave the set at the end. He just loved it. And also, when you're casting a kid, you have to cast the parents as well. You need very cooperative parents. And Luke's father, Matthew, is also a actor. So I was able to say to Luke's father, Matthew, you should watch Cries and Whispers by Ingmar Bergman, and watch how the woman in that reacts to pain. And then you can convey to Luke, that's the kind of physical reaction I want from him, you know. So it was great to have the father as a kind of an acting coach before Luke actually came to the set. But yeah, but with kids, it's very easy. You just treat it like a game, and they never know they're in a horror movie, ever.
David, wake up!
We couldn't find evidence of...
Yeah, the symbol was just something that we tried. We went to all the usual occult symbols, but we couldn't agree on one. So one day I just woke up and I drew it on a piece of paper in the hotel. And I have no idea whether it's a real symbol or not, but just felt right. And I showed it to the production designer, and he said, yeah, it's perfect. Let's go with that. So really, I just made it up. It's not any real occult symbol. However, Mississippi is very, very religious, and for them, it's religion is a. I mean, I'm from Ireland. It used to be religious, but it's very secular now. It's very few people believe in God, I think. But in Mississippi, I mean, it's a living, breathing thing. So I felt really nervous down there telling them what the film was about, because they believe in demons and devils and all that sort of stuff. But what's great about Mississippi is that religion is everywhere. And in every church you pass by, they're always full and people are singing hymns. And we were able to record some of the singing coming from that church that we passed by. And there's all this amazing blues music. So we just absorbed the atmosphere of Mississippi, and it just found its way into the film. I have a friend who's an archaeologist, and he gave me all this research of these Babylonian chants and Assyrian demon incantations. So what I did was I just did a variation on these real incantations. So all of the names of the demons that she says, they're real demons, except for the demon in the film, which is just a Latin name for huntsman, the huntsman spider, So it's based on actual incantations. And the incantation she used in the film is an incantation to conjure pestilence, disease. And it was really strange because COVID hit just after we shot the film, and this thing about incantation of disease was really eerie, but really it's just based on real incantations. So it's not actual, but all the names of demons that she names are real. And and some really strange things happened on set as well. The day after we shot the incantation scene, I went to my office, the production office, and my desk, and only my desk, was completely covered in thousands of ants, red ants, all over the desk. And the production was hit by not one, but two tornadoes. And you can actually see the result of one of the tornadoes in the film when they go to see Mrs. Nagel. It's supposed to be in Kansas. And there's an actual tree on top of the house, which the night before we shot, a tornado had gone through there and lifted the tree out of the ground, and it landed on the house, So it was really, really strange. And also this guy had been working on set as like a PA. And he kept coming up to me and he kept saying that he was a Satanist, and that he was very worried about the incantations that we were using. And I was trying to convince him, no, it's just based on it. It's not actual one. And he said we were conjuring all of these evil spirits and stuff, He's really freaking me out. But then at the end of the production, I heard from one of the producers that they told me that this guy had come to the set and told them that he knew me and asked for a job. But I had never met the guy in my entire life, So it was really, really freaky, And a lot of very strange things happened during the film. Not that I believe in any of that, but it got me worried a little bit.
Let me be completely honest with you. I was raised in a cult.
Wake up, honey.
Yeah, I mean, it just felt right to me. I love films that have contrasting moods and switch genres that you're never quite sure where they're going. And I loved throwing in these things that would, after you see these horrific murders, that you throw in these cartoons, which just seemed like it was almost like a release valve for tension, but at the same time it was kind of funny. It was a little black humor. It just felt right to me. I mean, I laugh every time I see it, and the contrast with the life at the beginning and then the way it turns suddenly into this horror movie was, I always felt like the structure of the film visually was it should go from like a normal Norman Rockwell painting view of America, and then go into this hellish taxi driver view of America, where the pimp and that factory motel and stuff, and that seemed to me to sum up America perfectly, And another film that structure wise that I was looking at was Nicholas Ray's film, I think from 1948, called On Dangerous Ground, which is a very, very strange film. It's a brilliant film, but it starts off as this really, really gritty cop drama. where we see Robert Ryan on the streets of New York or wherever he is, and he's a real violent tug of a cop. And then he's sent away to this countryside location to investigate this murder. And suddenly it turned into this idyllic love story. It's a very, very strange but brilliant film, you know. And I thought of this film as being like the reverse structure of that, you know. But I've always loved contrast in movies and lane swerving genres and contrast. I love that stuff. Like what you were saying earlier on with cutting to the paintings. I think that works in a similar way. And also after he kills Susan, we cut to some sweets, candy on the ground as well, which I thought was a nice, funny and kind of childlike cut to the sweets, you know. But yeah, I just love contrast, and it just felt right to me.
I was drowning in a river of blood. How could...
Well, I mean, it was all about the build up to it. So I always wanted the audience to be kept guessing all the way through whether she's crazy or not crazy. Is she crazy, not crazy? And keep going back and forth. And every scene that we see her from her point of view, say seeing the cult, seeing her son turn into this, whatever he is, seeing him kill. In the next scene, we cut to someone else who says, in fact, no, she's crazy. She's just imagining it all. So the audience is never quite sure. And I wanted to leave the answer to the very, very last scene. You know, that was always the plan. But the editing was very tricky on that one. It was, well, how much do we show, or how far do we leave it? How much of a conversation is it before the reveal happens, you know? How much of the demon do we show, you know? And right to the very last, we were saying, no, we're showing too much. No, we're showing too little. And we're taking little bits out all the time. So it was very, very tricky, you know? But yeah, I really loved and again, that contrast, I think, comes in again at the end that you mentioned earlier. Because when we see the very last frame, I won't say what it is, then we cut to this song that is this jokey song from a cartoon. And the song is, I'll see you someday in dreamland. So again, you're questioning, is this scene real or not real, you know? So I think at the very end, there's a little bit of ambiguity there still, you know? Somebody said to me, they wrote to me and they asked me, and I hadn't thought of this, but I think it's interesting, that perhaps the very last scene is Laura's last dream as well, you know, which I hadn't thought of, but it's kind of interesting as well. So, yeah, it was very tricky, the editing of that particular scene. Really, really tricky. How much to show, how little.
How does the chief?
She had suffered such terrible abuse in her life. She had...
Actually, Emil he said he had a blast doing it. He had a great time doing it because he felt like he was the only character in the film. And he's kind of right, who knew what was going on. And always we were saying, should I give a hint here of the truth, or am I going too far with my performance? And always we were pulling back, you know. So I was telling him that he should just believe everything he's saying all the way through the film, you know. And he really relished the role because he's only ever played really heroic characters before. And this one is a bit iffy. I don't want to give it away, but we're not quite sure whether he's heroic or not, you know. And yeah, he had a great time with it. And what attracted him to the role was the fact that he'd never played a character like this before, you know. The puppet master kind of character, you know. So yeah, he had a great time. Sometimes he went way overboard with the performance, like in that last scene you just mentioned. I mean, he was bigger than Jack Nicholson in The Shining, and I had to tell him to come down. It's too much, you know. Your glee or your happiness at that scene is too much. So that was also a one to balance. It was a tightrope balancing act. But he had a great time. Yeah, I like Emil. He's a great actor.
If this is real, she needs our protection.
No, what if it's not?
I always wanted to do but I've never found a story yet that I want to do, but I'd love to do a war movie. A really gritty, well, I love the last, I like the film overall, but I love the last 40 minutes or 45 minutes of Full Metal Jacket. That scene in the city, I think it's just amazing. I'd love to do a whole film like that, you know. I always wanted it, but I've never been able to find the right war story. I've tried it many, many times. I was writing a war movie about a guy who operates a flamethrower, which was pretty horrific, but I've never been able to pull it off. So maybe someday, if I had an unlimited budget, I'd make a war movie for sure.
They awaken.
Well, the film I've watched, I'm not saying it's the best film ever made, but the film I've watched more than any other film ever, and countless times I watched it, is Martin Scorsese's film After Hours. I just love the atmosphere of that film. I think it's a perfectly edited film. I've learned so much from that. You know, the performances are all pitch perfect. I've watched it so many times, endlessly fascinated by it. It's just brilliant atmosphere, brilliant performances, brilliant music. That's my desert island movie. That's the one I'd bring to the desert island. If I only had to pick one movie to watch for eternity, that would be it. I just love, and that's something I try to do with my own films, is creating a full world and atmosphere. And Scorsese does that with that New York nightlife I just want to live in that world. It's so beautifully evoked, you know. But After Hours would be the film I'd watch more than any other. And if you haven't seen it, you should watch it. It's amazing.
Whatever I do, I will always take care of you.